The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hello, welcome to a discussion with Lynda Haupert. I'm Pat Lindquist, and today we're talking with the designer of the new Better Homes and Gardens American Heritage Cookbook, and this is a wowzer. Welcome, Lynda.
Thank you, Pat.
Boy, am I overwhelmed. I'm a picture person, and if you are a picture person and you're a food person, you're going to be in heaven when you run into a book this size with photos this large, welcoming you to the world of food across America. This looks like a project that has taken years.
Well, a book of this scope normally would take years, but we actually put this out in 10 months.
Oh, I can't believe
phenomenal.
it. Well, now tell me, you've been doing cookbooks and designing space with color and recipes for Better Homes and Gardens for some years?
Yes, I have. I've been there for 13 years.
Oh, and it must be a challenge because there's so many things to choose from. What books have you done prior to this?
One of the last ones I did was the Farmer's Market Cookbook, and one that has just come out this fall is Quick, Healthy, and Delicious.
For 1993.
For 1993.
Getting into healthy food.
It's timely. Everybody nowadays is wanting to be real healthy.
Oh, well, it's just so exciting. And when that kind of a thing, you do go to the farmer's market and get photos of all the fresh produce and things that we're using now in foods?
Yes, we did photograph food. We photographed actually in the studio.
I see, okay.
The recipes, and then we had a lot of photographs taken at farmers markets around the Midwest and around the country.
And when this book assignment came up, I understand that thousands of photos were checked out.
There were many photos to choose from. It was really fun.
The goal was to cover America.
Yes,
and do
absolutely.
it in regions. And this kind of thing just shocked me. I mean, you never know that when you open up a cookbook, the first 2 or 3 pages, you're going to see a pictorial image that, well, to me, it's kind of like I've seen these books. It's a day in a life here and a day there. It looks like someone's gone out and really caught the earth in full regalia, and the food to follow, huh?
Yes, it's the scope of the book is really just huge.
Now you divided America into 7 regions.
7 regions.
And did you have a favorite as you worked on that?
Oh, I like recipes from all of the regions, really. I really don't have a favorite region.
Did you have to plan? Now the size of the book I thought was quite large. Was there a reason for this dimension? I mean, rather than 15 inches high or whatever, it's I have the specifics on some of it here. It's just fascinating planning. Is there a reason for this height and width?
This is kind of a cornerstone book for us. It's going to be out there for a number of years, and there is so much in our history that we wanted to make a big, magnificent book that would, that would represent that.
So they said 10 by 14. So when it opens up, you're seeing
20 by 14.
20 by 14.
Panoramic picture there.
So as we start to look through this book today, The Heritage of America, we're going to let's start with our oldest region, New England, and up there in the eastern part of the coast. And a lot of this has been set with, I think you can see some all-Americana stuff, a little red, white, and blue. And we're looking back in New England. Here's the setting that welcomes you when you start New England. And what do we find in our history of our New England cooking? What influences do you think were strong there?
Well, this goes clear back to, actually, the Native American influence was big. And it goes clear back to the Pilgrims. The book starts back when the Pilgrims arrived. And, the Pilgrims really didn't know a whole lot about farming the land. A lot of them were not we tend to think of them all as farmers, but they weren't. They were artisans and other things.
We remember the corn influence.
Right.
In our history.
And so they came over and had a lot of help from the Indians, learning how to farm the land and hunt for the game and stuff. There was one Native American in particular named Squanto who had been an indentured servant over in Europe, so he could speak English, and he taught them how to plant corn. And they would plant the corn in a hill and put a fish in to fertilize it.
Oh, I remember reading about that in school.
And then plant the beans next to it, and then the beans could twine around the corn stalk. And they would cook them together then, and that's what we know as succotash today.
Succotash, okay.
Yes, right.
Then you've shown us a visual image here of our early American cook, and
Can you imagine cooking like that?
Oh, I think it's just, first of all, the picture is wonderful, and then we see an older one there putting bread into an old oven. I had the opportunity of visiting a Sturbridge over in the east and saw the women in their dresses. I hear that getting caught with the flames at the hearth was the most serious damage the women had in those days.
I bet, and they
catching fire fire.
They wore woolen skirts when they worked around the fire because it was less flammable than the cotton would have been.
So after we learn a little bit about the heritage, we go into the flavors of New England.
Yes.
And of course, we're all familiar with the wonderful seafood influences. We see wonderful, wonderful pictures of shellfish and shellfish recipes, wonderful things with lobster. I don't know if the camera can look at this kind of thing with the corn, different clam bakes. Maybe there's a few recipes that you might mention as we look at this kind of shot. What do you see there that's tasty?
Oh, it's all tasty.
And
You're
easy to
asking me?
make?
Oh, certainly, especially something like the clam bake. You know, in New England, the recipes were a little simpler than the recipes would have been in the South, for instance, because the women didn't have the help in the household that they did.
Good point. Good
So
point. And
they-
cold winters, you got to keep the fire going. You haven't got time to cook,
Yeah,
right?
you were stirring the pot with one hand and grabbing the kids with the other. So.
Well, and then some of the favorites I saw, the ethnic influence. We see Irish stew, we see Portuguese sausage, New England boiled dinner.
Yes.
All the cultures from
All of
Europe
the-
that had come in.
Right.
And now we're in this section, I think we have 30 or 40 pages of the New England. Some of the soups, wonderful soups, a cranberry maple sauce, sweet mashed maple, sweet
those sound
potatoes,
good.
and yeah, warm
and they used
comfort
a lot
food.
of the maple syrup and things like that too in their cooking, which is interesting.
And besides the pictures and the history that we learn as we go through the book, the other thing that kind of is going to be helpful, I think, for this year's reader of this type of book is you have under every recipe the ingredients in a health way, the cholesterol, the
Right.
fat.
We
Now,
have-
how was that decision?
We have a
brought
nutrition analysis with every one of our recipes, and people today want to know what they're eating. I mean, everybody's health conscious, and they're conscious about how much fat and salt and all of that they eat, and so they can look and see. The thrust of the book was not to make these fat-free recipes, for instance.
And they aren't.
And they
Some of
aren't.
them.
Some of them aren't. But you will find recipes that are very low in fats and things here too. The thrust was to give us a taste of what our heritage of cooking is here across the country. So.
Well, the second section you move into out of the 7 is the Mid-Atlantic. Now, again, as a person who's getting educated with the country along with the recipes, wasn't it fun to look at this picture and think you were in the Everglades? And at
It does
first
look like
glance,
that.
I thought, well, this is the wrong photo. But this is Delaware,
It's
you tell
Delaware,
me.
yes.
Don't we have a picture in our own mind of what the country looks like? And aren't we going to learn a little differently, perhaps?
Definitely.
And so, in fact, Delaware, even though we think of it as mid-Atlantic, has a lot of warm and seafood influences like New England. We have a little history there about Ben Franklin. Can you share with us about that?
Ben Franklin would have fit in real well today because he was a health conscious person, and he felt that people should eat only what they could, what their body needed. It's kind of funny because you look at pictures of him, and he was always this rotund little man.
His body needed a lot.
Kind of like my body needs a lot, needs all that chocolate.
And so he had some health awareness.
Right, he did, and he wrote in Poor Richard's Almanac. He wrote about little sayings and things about that too.
Well, here's a few quotes. It says, "Youth, age, and sick require a different quantity." Well, that's true.
That is true. We require less as we get older.
The measure of food ought to be as much as possibly, maybe, exactly proportionate to the quality and condition of the stomach, because the stomach digests it. Now, maybe a lot of people didn't think about digestion, but he was aware.
Yeah, he was aware.
So we have some fun history thrown in. Then we have a little wonderful old photos here. This is the Delmonico restaurant in 1831. Someone must have gone through the archives now and taken a little research time. How did you work with those kind of things?
It was fun. There was so much, and it was hard to whittle it down. But there was so much to choose from.
And
it was
as
great.
the designer, you were the one who made a selection. What photo might go with what section, right?
Right.
That was a good choice.
Tried to choose things that would fit into the written history, so you'd have an illustrated vision of what was happening too.
And besides old and new, we learned a little bit about holidays. Now here's something about celebrating St. Nicholas Day. Now what might be that be in that part of the country?
Phillipsburg Manor, and it's an old manor house north of New York City, along the Hudson, and they had a tradition of early part of November or of December, around I think the 5th of December, of having a festive celebration where they would decorate cookies and the children would plan for St. Nicholas, because at Christmas time it was very religious, and so they didn't do that at Christmas time.
Okay, so that would be celebrated a little later. Now, as we go on through the Mid-Atlantic, I see some of the things that I've tried at home. I see Eggs Benedict came from New York.
Oh, yes.
And
Delmonico's created Eggs Benedict.
and that's where it came from.
Yes, in New York, and named it after one of their best customers. And the customers had come in one day and said they wanted something different for lunch. And so that's what they came up with.
So all we got is eggs in the kitchen.
Yeah, right. Oh, but what a...
There's your famous spicy Manhattan clam chowder. We've grown up knowing that that was different than the white chowder.
This is the tomato-based chowder, whereas the New England is the cream-based.
Oh, and here's something that the kids understand. I was slow to catch this, but buffalo chicken wings. And they came from Buffalo, right?
Yes, they did.
There's a little
spicy
picture of
chicken
them in the
wings.
corner there. We've picked that up all around our Minnesota restaurants with
I think it's
the
up
blue
clear
cheese
across the,
dip.
clear across the country.
A nice flavor and a nice way to treat an inexpensive piece of meat, and it's fun to nosh on and munch on, and fun to see where that came from. Well, now, as we move along then through the Mid-Atlantic, I'm going to see if there's any little other highlights that I just thought were awesome here. Baby corn relish, all the relishes and chutneys. Those are fun, and those are the kind of things a lot of us do here for Christmas gifts, packaging.
Right, and a lot of that came from the Pennsylvania Dutch.
Okay, Dutch influence on that.
Dutch influence and German influence.
I was going to say, here's a little German New York too, New York cheesecake, crullers, the Jewish fruitkugel. These are fun things, blennies and blentzes that come from the European influence that was in New York. Beautiful photos of that. Look how tasty.
New York is such a melting pot. They have absolutely every kind of food you can imagine.
And you do get hungry reading this, don't you?
When I was designing the book, you know, you'd pull those beautiful photographs up on the screen, and of course you didn't have the real food in front of you, and it was like, oh.
Would you use a light table that you would,
yes,
or actually shoot them up on the wall to look, or what?
We have a light table that we would use to look at transparencies, but I did the book on a Macintosh on the computer, and so we would scan the photos. And
isn't it a miracle what they can do with those?
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
I'm way behind on the Mac stuff, but I love what the results are. And here we come to the South, the third region. Now this does look more like Florida, right? Everglades. I don't know if we can get a close-up of that.
That's actually near Cape Canaveral.
And this again sets the page. Now I'm thinking if you sit down with a child in the household to look through the book, you can get a little sense of history. You show the map. We see the close-ups of the region and the states. Then we go through, and again, we're getting our influence of food. But we had a fun question about the South. Maryland was included in the South, and we wondered why.
Well, because there was a lot of Southern influence. You know, it's kind of a border state, and
because it was Confederate in the old days with the Southern cooking.
And the woman who wrote the history for the book, her name's Lorna Sass, and she's a food historian, and she divided the regions, and she put it in the South. And some people I think would maybe think of it as the North, but
well, they talk about Southern and Maryland, I think.
Yeah, I think they do.
And here we see the old-fashioned look again and some of the wonderful things here. Now, we got another gourmet from the old days. Ben Franklin was okay, but Thomas Jefferson. We heard a lot about Thomas Jefferson, and you've included something on him now.
He was quite a foodie. He spent a lot of time over in France and was quite a connoisseur of both food and wine. And he brought back a lot of the recipes and
that's a
methods
little shot
for cooking.
Of Monticello, I
yes,
believe.
That's Monticello. That's his kitchen garden. He would order seeds from all around the world and plant them, and so he introduced a lot of things like globe artichoke and asparagus and eggplant and salsify, things like that.
So herbs were a part of his thing, and ice cream, I hear. Is
ice
that
cream,
true?
yes. Some people credit him with developing ice cream. He didn't ice cream, but he did vanilla ice cream. He brought the vanilla bean back from France and made vanilla ice cream. He also covered it with a pastry and served it, which was kind of a forerunner to our baked Alaska today.
Oh, of course. And here's another favorite, Maryland crab cakes.
Oh,
and this is a lovely photo that will make you want to go home and cook. And a lot of things with crab, different ways. I've seen some things in this section on the Creole cooking in Louisiana.
Oh, yes.
Ways to use the seafood again in spicy ways, deep fried ways.
Right.
Just an unbelievable choice. I'm just thinking here, we were back with the dips a little bit. Here's something that might be fun for people to talk about, Kentucky burgoo. Do you think that would mean kind of a stew? And
yes, I've eaten burgoo before. Originally it was made with a lot of wild game, wild meats. And today people don't do that as much, but it can have beef and chicken and all kinds of stuff in it.
Isn't
it's
that
good stuff.
Tasty? Well, as we go through the South, I think a lot of us have seen and tasted some of those spicy things. But we get back up, there was something here, one little fattening thing. I wonder if I have that.
Only one?
That one little dessert item that we looked at on the set here a little earlier. I wondered if I could show that, but maybe I'll lose it. It was that little chocolate cookie. What was the name
was
of
it the
that
Whoopie
one?
Pies?
Whoopie
That was in
pie.
the Midwest.
Okay, well we
haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, well we're up to the I thought that was a southern influence.
No.
We're up to the Midwest then, which is our neck of the woods. I want to see what photo you used on the Midwest. Oh, good. You did the melting pot farmland.
Farmland.
Nice,
the corn.
colorful farmland. We see the Great Lakes, and we see some of that influence. And what kind of Minnesota foods recipes might we find in the book from Minnesota?
There are wild rice recipes. We have cream of chicken and wild rice soup. We have Swedish meatballs, Norwegian fruit soup, Swedish limpa bread, fruity wild rice pilaf.
Little Norwegian influence, little Scandinavian things. In fact, you brought a little treat today, didn't you?
I brought some kringla today.
Can we show what this is and maybe even taste it?
It's a Scandinavian kind of a cookie. It goes great with coffee because it's not terribly sweet.
A kringle, right?
Kringle or kringla.
And no calories and no fat in this, right?
It's really not bad. It really isn't.
Would you like one?
I'll after we're through. You'll have one. One of my friends, the grandmother of one of my friends, taught me to make this when I was in junior high. She was Norwegian, and she made it with an anise flavoring in it, whereas this has whereas this has nutmeg, which was, it can be made different ways.
The other thing that the Midwest brought us was Chicago deep dish pizza.
Yes.
And you had a few comments about that. I don't think we have a picture of the pizza, but wasn't it a Texan who came up to Chicago?
Yes, it was. Ike Sewell was his name. He came up to Chicago and teamed up with Rick Ricardo, who was an Italian restaurateur.
The other, of course, pot roast from Minnesota. We're all, or the Midwest. We're always looking at the great casserole dishes and vegetables and meat. We're the meat basket, aren't we?
Yes,
here in
we
the bread
are.
Basket,
the bread basket, I think. Right.
Look at that shot. That's just beautiful.
That look yummy.
And it looks like some fresh breads there too. Some of the unleavened breads that people, the sweet breads and fruits.
Yeah, there's a black walnut raspberry bread.
Okay. And a little soup, do I see too in that shot?
Yes, you do. That's
Very
the
good.
wild rice soup. Cream of chicken and wild rice.
Oh, and of course
soup.
we do so much with wild rice in Minnesota.
You do,
I saw there's
right.
some muffin recipes for people to try in that.
Yes, and it tells in the book how they harvested, the Native Americans harvested the wild rice and still do.
Yes, you're right. That's very popular here. Now we move along because we got so many regions to cover to the southwest. Here it looks like we're greeted by the Grand Canyon. This is certainly a region.
Isn't that beautiful?
Funny that this region has only 3 states in it because, as you said, some regions have 8, 10, 12 states, but it's spread out a lot.
And Texas is one of those states, and that they're big states.
And New Mexico and Arizona.
New Mexico and Arizona, right.
So I bet you we see a lot of the Native American food influence and the Mexican influence across the borders.
When you were asking me which region was my favorite, I guess, I really do like the Mexican food, so I guess maybe I'd have to say Southwest if I
So we're going to find some peppers and chilies and spicy additions to our food there. A little winter I see in this scene.
A little winter there, yes.
And
this is like a travelogue, really, when you go through the book, because the historical part has the beautiful pictures from all across the country.
Well, look at this one now. There you have the Indians' chili peppers and hanging to dry, and some of the Mexican recipes that go with that, I imagine.
There are over 200 varieties of chilies in the Southwest, but they only cook with about 12 varieties, which is still a lot of peppers.
I can't keep track of that kind of thing. Now, they said something about chocolate here, the curious case of chocolate. Chocolate was used a little bit in the mole sauces and things like that, so we have a little history of how that got involved. The quesadillas and guacamole and things we all have learned to love.
Making me drool.
Well, usually we eat them out and don't know we can do them at home, so this is a nice way
and they're
to
some of
show.
the easiest recipes to do, really.
I think you're right. A lot of little chopping and dicing and getting your vegetables ready. And then, let me just see if there's anything else here that's kind of a new thing for people to see. Tons and tons of choices here to try.
And these aren't just old recipes. These are the recipes up to date, too.
New, a tortilla torte.
Oh, doesn't that look good?
It looks very gourmet, very upscale, very today. So you're right, it's not old recipes. It's some salutes to the old and then modernization.
And modernization, too.
You say there are trends changing anyway, that you do update recipe books because you see we wanted to know the nutrition and we didn't used to want to know
people are wanting to be healthy and but they also like the comfort foods. And there are times.
Comfort food is what to you, for people who don't know?
Comfort food to me is the kind of food that I grew up with. It's the kind of food that Grandma cooked or my mom cooked.
Would it mean that a young kid today who grew up on Twinkies could still call that comfort food?
Oh, gee. Probably.
We have to be careful which generation. Some of the kids who've grown up on microwave cooking now, to them growing up, their mom never did cook. So we're lucky if we can remember a mother who cooked.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with somebody and it was somebody here in Minnesota who said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're doing this because our
My mother never
our
cooked.
kids, well, and our kids today, all they're going to remember is fast food.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Whereas,
Well, I have to admit,
they need to know about these old recipes.
we're into about a third generation, and the daughter cooks a little, and the children won't know if the grandma doesn't cook, and the
Right,
grandma's
that's right.
working. So this is the new scene for the West. We're moving completely to the West Coast here, and I can see your cowboy influence and your mountains.
This is
and your-
Colorado.
very colorful, and that's becoming a popular part of the country. Buffalo and the Montana growth,
yes,
and people
right.
moving out there. And again, looking back a lot of it to the history. Here we have some of the history of the Mormons in Utah on a very beautiful color spread. Looking at some of the early pioneers that pioneered in our southwest and west area. We think of New England, but we forget about the pioneers out here.
Right. It's interesting to me too that the book starts back in 1621, with the
Okay.
first Thanksgiving, and it was really the early 1800s. It was 200 years later when the West was kind of settled
You're
by our
right.
people,
You're absolutely right.
So
And
it's
this-
much newer out
This
there.
could be anywhere in the world. This could
Oh,
be
isn't that
Australia or
beautiful?
Spain. These wonderful
Right,
hillsides
the
where they were
Basque.
raising lamb
Yes,
and
and the Basque.
cattle. And I
Cooking.
don't know if you can see that green shot, how beautiful that is. I'll give you, there, I'll give you a little close-up of that. Isn't that wonderful? This is really a wonderful gift book, isn't it? It's something you'd want to just take days to go through.
Yes, and somebody was telling me that they were going to get one and send it to some friends over in France, some French friends, because they said what better way to give them a real feeling for our whole country, because this goes clear across the country.
Now, we had our New England clam chowder, and here we're out to the west, and Mormon fish chowder. So once again, our cross-cultural foods, and we've seen this around the world, how they move and bring it here and there. A chowder
Right.
out there in the middle of the West.
And every region adds their own little twists to it too, so that's how our recipes evolve and become different.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, this is going to bring you back to the kitchen, but now a book like this, would I want to bring it into the kitchen? I'm scared I'm going to wreck the book.
Gosh, I hope people will bring it in the kitchen. The best cookbook's the one that's used, that's got
I
little
know, but
things
now
on
you had
it.
a suggestion how to
I
bring this-
did. If you are really concerned about getting food on it, just put some plastic wrap over the page.
Like a little
Yeah,
sheet of
just-
saran wrap
yes,
that you pull out of your
right.
kitchen drawer. Now here's one of the pizzas that's the California
this
West
is a
Coast
Boboli.
gourmet pizza. Yeah.
Boboli pizza.
And they do look at the toppings, how wonderful they are and fresh.
Yeah.
So get the saran wrap out and lay it across that shot, because look at that photo.
Lay it on the side of the counter, so it's
You know,
not right in the middle of your
I do have
stuff.
a table adjoining the cooking counter. There's no reason I need this right under my nose.
You told me that you had this book in bed last night too.
Well, not yet. It is bedside reading, as I said when we started the show. In fact, there was a cute quote from Dom DeLuise. I had seen a lot of famous people around the country have been reading this book and already saying they like it. I guess you must have sent out a few test copies.
Yes.
And it just came out the fall of '93, and people are still just discovering. But Dom DeLuise, who we've always known as kind of a chubby, lovable comedian, likes to cook. And he had said, this book has history, information, great recipes. It's like curling up in bed with a good friend. So he must have taken it to bed with him,
taken it to bed too.
And the only thing, it's a little bit big, so you have to kind of prop a pillow behind your back. But I really just love it. Now we're up to, let's see, we're through the west here. We saw the gourmet pizza. I think we're coming up to, we have a,
Coming up to the
What do you call that?
Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, and
Pacific
beyond,
Northwest.
beyond being Alaska
okay, and beyond.
and
Let me see what
Hawaii.
you've used for, oh my heavens, look what you've used
the
for a
lilies,
divider
isn't that
here.
beautiful?
This is really the Pacific Northwest.
And we think of flowers when we're out there too. I mean, because they can grow everything
And
all
snow.
year round.
I mean, it is just unbelievable. Yeah, those of us who live in Minnesota know that we have snow more times than they
True.
do, but I've heard it's a little rainy there, so they do have the chill. Well, so let's see what kind of food. Now, apple trees, that's interesting. I
grow.
think of those in Michigan. I forget about Oregon
Yeah,
and
but
Washington
they
apples.
grow all of the wonderful fruit out there too.
So here's something, now that looks like Mount Fujiyama in the background. But this is a wonderful close-up look of what's happening with the apples. And are there some apple recipes in the
Yes, there
next few
are. There
pages?
sure are. There's apple pie, apple cherry pie. In fact, the recipe on the cover of the book is an apple cherry pie.
Uh-huh. That's a fun one to share. I hope our viewers are enjoying the close-up looks, because there's just, this book, as we said at the start, is a picture book. It's something that you won't want to put down. Here we're getting another look about mushrooms growing in that part of the country, and some history, and a photo that, again, I would not know where that is in that part of the country, but my goodness, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's just
beautiful
beautiful.
waterfall, and then one of her archive shots that you've thrown in. They're wonderful sepia prints, a lot of them. They look
Yes, they
etched
are.
in old wood
Yes, they are.
engravings.
This one
and
is is of a miners, or the
kind
not a
of
miners, of a logging
camp where
Yes.
they'd probably have a good
Right,
hearty breakfast and
right.
lunch to keep those men out there working. A good 100 years ago, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful shot. And I do think that history is what our kids are going to enjoy seeing. Now we get into a little aloha. You've
Little
gone across
aloha,
to
you
Hawaii.
bet, you bet.
And all the way up to Alaska, so you have a few of those influences.
And we talk about the coffee in Seattle. You can't. That's
coffee.
really a fun.
Now what is the story on coffee?
Well,
There's an old
Seattle,
coffee grinder I see.
Yeah, Seattle is just. In fact, they call themselves Latte Land because they have become so known for their coffees. And there's a list in here of, what to ask for if you go in to order coffee. And I thought it was kind of fun. They have a double dry short, which is a double shot of espresso in a small cup without any foam, or a drip brew grande, a harmless, which is decaf with non-fat milk. But there's a whole list of
Why do you think
different
coffee
things.
Developed out there? Was because it's chilly and they needed to
Yeah,
they import maybe along the coast?
Yeah, I'm
of
sure
the
that they
coffee?
imported it, and it just became their thing. I guess like anything
Isn't that interesting?
evolves.
And of course, here's a little bit more on the soups. And of course, soups are the wonderful kind of thing at this time. Now, I want to see if you have a little Hawaiian influence here as we
Oh,
get
yes.
the Eurasian. Yes, this is the area where I feel there's a lot of growth on my travels and on my food finds. I love the gingers and the spices
Yes,
with fish,
I do
the
too.
fruits mixed with spice and fish. And we're seeing that in Hawaii. We're seeing it all along the West Coast and from the Far East, of course.
Right.
And it's healthy eating too.
It is healthy eating.
Here we're seeing some fish, aren't we? Yes.
Yes.
And there's no fat in fish, hardly, and the sauces can be light. And I just can't think of another book that I've seen this year that can offer this kind of choices and this kind of beauty and education, plus those darn nutrition reminders that, yes, it's got this or it's got that. Look at that beautiful drink.
And every one of our recipes has been tested in our Better Homes and Gardens test kitchen. So
That is quite a job.
you'll have a success when you make it. It makes a big difference.
Well, I think we're so privileged to have you visit with us today. And once again, if you haven't seen this book yet, it is the Heritage of America cookbook from Better Homes and Gardens. And we've been talking with Lynda Haupert, who has been an expert at laying out color and design and space and creating a visual image that I want to keep on my bookshelf. And thank you for being with us
Thanks,
today.
Pat. It's fun.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.